Apocalypse Gaming.
Hi guys, what I'm doing here is marking a brass rod which is going to be part of the supports for the railing. I'm marking first of all where I'm going to drill through the rod using a pin drill. So my first marking is 7 mils and then it's every 1.5 centimeters from that point onwards. I'm using a small micron pen to just give as neat a line as possible so that when I come to drill I'm trying to get as accurate a representation as possible to the heights. There will be some variation due to my inadequacies of doing it, but I'm trying to give it a relatively accurate height size throughout. So that's what I'm doing there. Now I'm getting a pin drill. It's the smallest drill we have. I think it was 0.2 was the size of the drill bit that I'm using, and just clamping it in place to try and keep the rod still and steady as I go to drill. This process was exceptionally time consuming. To drill 18 holes turned out to be 20 because I had to add another 2. It took an hour and a half to drill these holes into the brass rod. Quite a laborious process. If I'd got out maybe the DeWalt I could have maybe done this quicker, but it'd have probably been less accurate. So took my time with the pin drill. Brass is quite a hard metal to drill through, so that was a full hour and a half of drilling. Not much pressure applied though, so it was still quite happy with the end results. What you do have to be careful with is trying to get the drill bit started, as it wants to slide on the brass quite a lot. So that's the drill all the way through, just trying to zoom in and show you how it goes through the brass, and you can see the other dots marked on and having to move along from that point. Enjoyable process, but I won't be doing it too often. There's a lot of editing of footage in this because unfortunately where I positioned the camera I kept blurring what was happening throughout this entire movie. Part 4 has got a lot of edits put into it because my camera positioning was shocking, so you saw more of the back of my head or the back of my wrists than you actually saw of what was happening with the project. So I apologise for the amount of cuts that are in this, hence why you've got a voiceover happening throughout. What I'm showing you now is the brass piping or the brass rod that's going to go through the piping. That makes up the bottom rail of the handrails. So I was just checking that definitely fitted through and trying to show you a little bit of what it looked like. So that's that part. You'll see more of that later on in the build when I get to attaching all the rails after this has been all drilled out and cut. Okay, it's a few more drilled. I think that was 3 and that was about 20 odd minutes later, so long process. As I say, most of this I was cutting out. So that's the brass rods now ready to be cut to length. Again, I marked 1.5 centimeter lines, which you can just see on the video where the blade's going to go, using the Dremel metal cutter to chop these down to size. So it then makes my hole in the centre of the rods. This pit was exceptionally easy to cut, and what I hadn't realised, even on that short cutting time, the brass rod becomes exceptionally hot. There was more than one piece I touched where I gave my fingers a bit of a burn. Not anything enough to cause a blister or anything like that, but still very, very hot pieces. Just the friction of the blade cutting through heats them up very quickly. You do get raggedy edges doing it this way, but it's much quicker than getting out what I call the bone saw and cutting through the metal the old way. So the Dremel's a great tool for doing it. Does leave you with some raggedy edges, but those are easily sanded off at the end, so making the process much quicker, particularly as it took such a long time with the pin vise to actually drill the holes in the first place. A bit of advice is don't go out too far when you're cutting, otherwise the brass rodding wants to bend with the force of the Dremel on the end, so maybe 2 sections most out with your clamp, otherwise you start getting bend happening. As you can see, it cuts through it like butter. Okay, that's all my brass rods now cut. What I'm going to do is sand off the burrs that are on the edges. So what I'm going to try and show you here is one of the burrs. Pretty much every piece had these little raggedy edges, but a few seconds maximum on each of the sides on the sandpaper takes them off nice and cleanly. I did spend a little bit longer than that just rounding edges, etc., but it was very, very simple, very fast process because the metal had already had the stress put on it which weakened it, so just those burrs came off, sweetly came off very easy. I think you can see that clearly in the footage. Okay, what I'm now going to show you is me drilling the Thunderchild's deck to accommodate the brass rods for the uprights for the fence. This bit was giving me a little bit of worry. Actually, it was giving me a lot of worry because I was concerned that when I drilled I was going to split the decking. Turned out I had absolutely nothing to be worried about because when I used the pin drill, because I kept it very loose and just let the drill do the work and didn't put any pressure down, there was not one plank took a damage. Again, this process took a considerable amount of time to get through all of it. And again, this one's had to be edited heavily because an awful lot of the time the camera was filming the side of my head rather than filming what I was actually drilling here. So I think if I remember right, we cut largely to the process being done once this first hole's cut. But it's a case of putting no pressure on the planks. If you put any pressure on it, you can split them. I think the amount of varnish and paint I'd laid down did strengthen the deck a bit as well, which meant when I was cutting it was less likely to splinter, less likely to split. Did not drill all the way through. I drilled maybe 3/4 of the way down because I didn't want my super glue to get through to the foam below. So each of the holes that are put in roughly 3/4 the depth of a coffee stirrer, just to sit in and hold the uprights. So that was me just checking and it was the right depth and it was holding it. It wasn't, so it was adding a little bit of depth on that first cut, and this is where I realised the depths I should be going to. As I say, I didn't want to go all the way through because these are then getting super glued into place, and super glue and foam, I'm not sure what it would do, but I didn't want to risk melting through the hull after the work it had put in to get to this stage. But you can see the length of time it's taken to get one hole, so it's just take your time, go back, forward, try it out, make sure each one's going in nice and smooth. And as you can see, it's nice and snug fit, holds the brass rod. I was just lucky I had a drill bit of the right size because the drill bits we got down at that size jump up a couple of millimetres each time, so it was just lucky the set that we have, it holds it nice and snug, and then these can get glued into place to be the uprights for the railings. So moving on, that's me showing you again, I drilled out all the holes throughout the deck where the uprights are going to be, so all those white dots are the holes that are drilled. So I tried to film all this and give you just a speeded up version of it, but it wasn't happening for the simple fact that for most of the time I blocked the camera view. But I think it's probably better worked out this way anyway, because cutting to the end I'd be a bit boring watching it all. I don't know, I'd have been bored watching it all the way through from start to finish. So the glue I'm using is Gorilla Glue. It's a super glue that I came across when I was in the Republic Island, but I can now find it in the UK as well. I like it. It's supposedly got a bit of rubberization to the glue, so it can take more of a knock. Not sure if that's true or not, but compared to some of the other super glues that I've used, it's becoming my personal favourite. And trust me, we've tried a few glues. My wife's got a bit of a glue addiction. Not that she sniffs it, but she likes to collect it everywhere we go. More glues added to the glues that we have, but I tend to stick with the Gorilla. So that's just putting a bit of glue onto each of the rods and putting them in place. This I thought was the best way to go. Turns out it wasn't, because I had some of these pop out when I come to start put in the next section. There's my big hairy noggin getting in the way, but a lot of the other shots were a hell of a lot worse. So it's just a small bit of glue on the end. Didn't want to put it directly into the decks because I didn't want to get any glue all over the deck, so it was a small bit on the end, put it in place. A few of them, you'll see later on, I'm not sure if I filmed that, but I had to put the glue into the deck holes just to get the secure bit better, because some of these did come away just with pressure. What might have been better is if I had a pin all the way down through, deeper into the actual foam, holding it stronger in place. But we live, we learn. This is the first time I've done this type of project, so I'm enjoying it, and we'll keep going. Let me know how you feel about this length of footage. Didn't speed up a lot of this, rather cut it into parts. I could have just done the faster motion forward and shown you less. So if you do watch this, leave it in the comments whether you want me to keep this sort of length, or whether you'd just rather see me rattling through, doing a bit less talking, and see how it goes, because as much as I'm doing this for my own enjoyment, I'm putting the videos up for you guys to get a bit of ideas and inspiration. If you don't need to see me doing stuff for as long, I can do smaller cuts and just give you an idea of how I've done things, rather than giving you a longer look at me doing the process. So I'll go probably with the majority decision. Obviously there'll be a bit of my own choice in it as well, but let me know how you feel about the length I'm showing you of each part of the process, because I can certainly show you the basics of doing one part and then just cut to the end and show you finished product if you'd rather see it that way. So that's it with the organ guns in place, showing you an idea of how the railing's going to look, and the next part I do is start and adding the railing wires. Okay, this is me getting the railing wire, and I'm going to start at the front of the ship, and this is where I start to realise the error of my ways of gluing them all into place, because this wire's flexible, but it's not totally flexible, and I never cut it to length either. I might have also been better starting at one end and working all the way around, but for some reason I decided to start in the middle. Symmetry or something was running through my brain. So this is where the first of my errors come to fore, but you live and you learn. So the end post there I didn't drill all the way through so that the wire stops before it goes all the way through, or at least some of them I did. I think this is one of the ones that I did that on, so it gave me the place to push up to and no further. But now as I try to feed the wire through the other way, the strength of the brass starts to take hold. Maybe a Dwarven ship, but not built with Dwarven engineering. And pop. That happened to a few of them. What I might have been better doing is, once I had my two end stops, would have been to feed each of the brass uprights through the railings and then glue them in place as I went along. But I was left in the position of having all these in place already, so I had to work with what I've got. So a few of these needed re-gluing. Some of them I put the glue on the bottom, other ones the glue ended up having to go straight onto the deck. A bit of cleaning up of the brass as well to fix these. That's a bit of glue going on the end of the brass rod, sorry, the brass wire to go into the uprights just to secure it in place in there as well. So that's me just pushing it up against the wall, but as I did that I popped one out the other side as well. Different ways this could be probably fixed would be either some sort of pins all the way down deeper into the foam through the hole in the brass rod, excuse me, or sitting these on the wire first and then gluing them in place as I go through, or a combination of both possibly. That's all the brass wire now on and in place, so next part is adding the top part to the fence, which is our chain fencing, to just try and give it that nautical looking sort of fence where you've got a solid bar at the bottom and more of a looser chain floating along the top. So this is just some sort of simulation of gold chain that was picked up in a modelling shop, and this gets glued directly onto the top of the posts, but trying to left a little bit loose on some of them, a bit tighter on others, to give it that nature of the actual swing. Okay guys, so that's the railing attached. I have spars, a solid rail and then a chain rail, because I feel that looks very ship-like. Next stage is painting up these organ guns, painting up the green stuff moulds, and then decorating the rest of the side of this hull. After that I'll move on to the upper deck and take it how it's going, because I have ran out of room compared to the amount of room I had on my not so good scale drawing. So steam generating tank's going to have to go there, and that would leave room for troops to still use these guns if it was sort of real, which leaves me at this sort of area here to put in whatever the command post may be. So I'll work on my designs for what I'm going to do there, and then I'll put in the flotation. The flotation's going to be a zeppelin up the top somewhere. The exact designs of the zeppelin I'm still playing about with, but most likely I'm swaying towards a traditional zeppelin shape. So hope you like where it's going so far. I'll paint up these parts and take it forward from there.
Apocalypse Gaming.